Hey, thanks so much for checking out this episode of the Order of Chaos podcast featuring Aidan Wachter. Real quick, before we dive in, I do want to let you know there are only 4 spots remaining in my upcoming year-long apprenticeship program. So if you're looking for direct mentorship in a complete system of magic, click the top link in the description and apply to the program. All right, on to the episode.
The following message is transmitted.
All right, welcome back to the Order of Chaos podcast. Today, my guest is Aidan Wachter. Aidan is the author of several books on magic, including Six Ways, Weaving Fate, and Changeling, and he is also a co-contributor to This Is Chaos, in which I am also featured along with a few other colleagues. Aidan, it's awesome to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you are, I gotta say, man, not to sound super pretentious, but there's not like a ton of people who I really look up to in the magical space, but you are definitely one of them. I really appreciate your approach to magic. I feel like, I love what you said on your website in particular about, finding that there's these two extremes. So you've got people who are writing books that require you to be in a particular belief system. And then you've got books that are like completely devoid of any sort of mysticism at all, and they're so dry, right? That's kind of my takeaway from it, and I really agree. And it's a bridge that I think we need to bridge that gap in order to get more people to understand that magic is real in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of why it's kind of so stratified right now, is because to me, it's normative human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really get how making it super abstracted is helpful for people to realize that.
Yeah. So I've noticed that people really like, to see some evidence or at least explanation that isn't just, well, just believe it, or just, this is just the way it is. Right. So there's like I'm a huge fan of Pete Carroll, obviously. And I really love his approach because he tried to explain things from a very, very grounded standpoint. But at the same time, one of the things that Pete and I really disagree upon is that he rejects all mysticism entirely, outright, completely. So anything that is completely physics based, he wants nothing to do with.
And I was surprised I was invited because of that.
Oh man. So a lot of people might think this about Pete Carroll because he is, he's very like expressive about his opinions, but he and I have been emailing back and forth for the last 2 years, and we disagree about lots of stuff, but it's fun. He loves it. He likes when people challenge his ideas, and he likes that that the practice is going in this new direction. And I think so. Like my essay in the book is called Chaos Witchcraft, and it's about theistic chaos magic, because I believe in the reality of an objective spirit realm, that is something that we will be able to quantify with science one day. It's just that we're not there yet. We're not there yet in terms of proof, but like, listen to Michio Kaku talk about dark matter life forms. Tell me what's the difference between that and a spirit exactly?
Yeah, I come from the other side of that, which is Carroll was incredibly useful to me when I found him, because I got Liber Null and Psychonaut shortly after it was released in the US in '87. Mm-hmm. It was handed to me along with a stack of Crowley. And I'd already been exposed to some Crowley and some Witchcraft, some of the Wiccan stuff, some of the older stuff, Starhawk in particular, that had come out in '79, and I'd gotten that probably around '81. their first book, and then I'd connected with Temple of Psychic Youth in '82, but I hadn't really kind of figured out like what it all was to me.
Mm-hmm.
And Lieber Nolan Psychonaut helped me figure that out, but I ended up somewhere utterly different than where Pete is. And I never felt like that was an issue. It seemed like he's got the thing that makes sense to him. Mm-hmm. But I've never really felt like he's been explicitly anti anything else. Right. Except kind of people being stupid, which is,
he's very anti-astrology, which I think is the Capricorn. It's like, of course you're anti-astrology. You're a Capricorn.
It's also, I think it's very, it's super interesting because it's kind of the thing that I wrote in the book is really like chaos magic was kind of the pathway for me into animist sorcery. And at this point, I'm like way more on the animist side of it than the sorcerer side. Like to me, the animist side of it is actually more important. Yeah. And so it's funny because it's a lot of folks that really view me as explicitly their view of chaoist as being kind of non-belief in the spirit realm, which is pretty common.
Yeah.
Within that, are a little bit confused that most of the shit that I like reshare on social media or most of the people that I engage with on that level are devotional polytheists because we have a similar understanding. I don't get that. I don't have a theistic bone in my body, but it's like, okay, yeah, you've also figured out that this is real. So we're good. We can talk about all sorts of shit that doesn't require a whole lot of hedging.
It doesn't. And I think that these definitions are going to change. Maybe not change, but like a new understanding is going to emerge. So, when I talk to whenever I'm talking to my students about this, I'm always telling them it's not that some mythology is objectively true and that this spirit exists exactly the way that we describe them with exactly this name, which I know is the typical way of viewing theism. I believe in this God objectively. Odin is out there. He looks the way we think he looks. He replies to this name and blah, 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 blah. And I'm saying, no. Let's try and stay grounded here. What I call a spirit, I would call non-physical organized consciousness, which we ascribe stories and names to in order to interact with it.
Right. And this is a point that I have a lot of not an issue, but a lot of folks have issues with me because I'm so deficient sensory-wise in most of the clairs, using that language for clairvoyance, clairaudience, all of that. I'm technically clairsentient, but it's mostly a bodily reaction. And I can talk to these things, but there's a lot of very odd stuff happening physically when that happens for the most part. But so I don't perceive very many of the spirits that I work with as individuals. It's like they come through very much as kind of like a massed consciousness or as kind of a gestalt consciousness that are kind of like I could break them down into kind of more function than anything else in most cases. And it's really clear to me that when I do have where I can get some of those clairs really kicked up is in very deep trance work. And I've had straight up conversations with a bunch of these things that are like, oh yeah, this is nothing like what I am. This is just a face that your consciousness can put on me so we can communicate. This is a way I can show up for you. And they've periodically showed me deeper levels of that, but it's still through the filter of my experience set, my possibility set, all of that stuff. And so I do find the folks that like, yeah, this is this specific God, and it is 100% discrete from all other things in that shape, because I just haven't had that experience.
Neither have I.
I don't doubt that it's possible, and I don't have a reason to argue that. It's just I'm always like, interesting. Like, that's not how that shit works for me.
I fully agree. And it's what's funny to me is that I have a lot of friends who do experience it that way. And I can put myself in their shoes and say, well, if I saw this thing manifest right before my eyes, if my visualization, powers were that strong, I might be convinced also that it is what I see. I'm grateful that that doesn't happen, to be honest, because I think it gives me a more grounded point of view about it. And I also feel, and people are going to hate me for this, I also feel that when you say, okay, these gods are exactly what they are, knowing full well that those are stories that we made up and names that we gave them, that you're saying, I'm just going to lock it in this box and keep it there, which is actually, okay, I'm going to say like disrespectful to the gods in a way, but more so just like, why are you limiting to them to this specific thing rather than seeing them as maybe being far beyond that? And that's just the bridge we use to communicate.
Yeah, no, I totally see that. Yeah, it's I've said many times that I think that if we accept that everything that there's a really interesting distinction here. A lot of folks, kind of specifically in the chaos world, go, okay, it's all mind, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of other philosophies that also go here, but my mind is bigger than what most people think of, and I do disagree with that. That doesn't actually work for me, because I think we're cognitively incredibly limited. And the things that come through for those of us that kind of have reason to function in this way, kind of transcend that. It's either the idea of mind itself as we imagine it is completely flawed, or it's something much bigger than that.
I think it's both of those things.
And I think I agree with that. And I think it's probably more than those things too, I'm with you. I'm aphantasic, so I don't see anything ever, unless I'm in extreme deep trance. I do have visuals in very deep trance, but they're kind of visuals. It's more, I could tell you what things looked like, but I did not see it. Yeah. And my dreams are visual. Yeah. And, I used to take copious amounts of psychedelics to try and get that. And the only thing that really produced those was DMT. Yeah. And some really heinous combinations of things that are utterly unrecommended, because one of them put me in the hospital and another one came close. But, so it's like, that's not on the table for me. And what it has done is it's made me go, okay, so how do it's part of kind of, if I have a mission, part of it has been that. It's like, hey, most of this stuff is written by people who are hyperphantasic. They assume that it can be trained. Mm-hmm. And for what is assumed to be about 5% of us, it cannot be trained at all. Yeah. There's a big chunk of folks in the middle that, they can get better at it. But if you're aphantasic, you're aphantasic. Yeah. That part of the neurology is just not doing that game. And so it can be very difficult with so much magic saying, you need to see this thing floating in front of you. And it's like, well, that doesn't happen, which I figured out after trying for, 10 years. Yeah. And eventually go, well, fuck that. That's a waste of time, because there's all this other stuff that I do that works great. So I don't really care if the Golden Dawn or anybody else thinks this is a necessary tool. It hasn't been. It hasn't been proven to be.
No, and it's completely irrelevant to working effective magic in my experience. But it's a neat, cool experience that I would love to have, that a lot of people have had. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like fun. But what do you get out of it? Right. Like
now it may make a bunch of things really easy comparatively, but I haven't found that magic coming easy to people makes them better magicians. And so that's one of those things that you might want, but you may not want. If you
I don't want it. So I recently put out a YouTube video where I talked about, the most intense and very scary paranormal experiences I've had. I don't want more of that. It's not fun for me. The times that spirits have manifested into my direct space has been extremely unpleasant. I don't want that, right? It's not been because I wanted it. It was intrusive, and it was like, truly terrifying. So I think that's maybe another reason why, spirits don't manifest to me in that way. If we're looking at it now from their point of view towards mine, and that's not just that I don't see them. It's like, we're not going to show ourselves this guy. He's going to shit his pants.
Absolutely. It's interesting too, because it's like, it's one of the things that brought me into this stuff was like really unpleasant spirit experiences. Now, most of those weren't visual, or if they were, they happened in dreams. But they were incredibly palpable. They were having real world effects that other people that were not having the experience directly could witness. And so I never had that question. And it's an interesting one too, because that's another distinction I often make is like, it's one of the questions I have if somebody's looking. It's like, are you already having all this shit happen? Because 80% of what you're going to read is geared towards getting you to that experience.
Yeah.
And if you already have that, you have to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Maybe you got to get a grip on it.
Because you have to figure out how to manage it, not how do I generate these states. And most of the work is set to help you generate those states.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's kind of a combination of those things were big guiding lights in most of the work that I've done so far.
Right on.
Publicly.
So speaking of which, for any of my listeners, I wonder if any of my listeners are unfamiliar with you, but in case any of them are, can you tell us, what how do you describe your practice and what really brought you to it?
It's very difficult to describe it now. As I said, I would say that I'm first an animist, in that most of my work is indirect. Essentially, all of my work that doesn't involve teaching in some way is directly spirit-led. I have a core group, both allies and then things that are a little further out, and we could talk about that distinction if it makes sense at some point. Sure. And what I do is what is interesting to all of us. My background was that I had a very traditional initiation for witches and others when I was 11, that I had an absolutely terrifying experience with a figure that I later figured out was the Man in Black from traditional witchcraft and a lot of European folklore, and some African-American folklore is extremely similar. I didn't know what that was, but everything changed after that. And that kind of sent me down the rabbit hole of being interested. And then I had a couple of very intense spirit possessions, one quite intense possession from one of the dead. Things along those lines, a couple really gnarly experiences with kind of land spirits, nature spirits that were really pissed off. And all of that sent me down the rabbit hole of like, what the fuck is going on one side? And then also, I appear to have been born with a complete disbelief and disdain for the story of what's going on here as it's told in the modern U.S.
Yeah, for sure.
And so all of those things kind of led me into magic. I was trained briefly in Anderson Fairy Witchcraft. I was in the OTO for 4 or 5 years. I was in the IoT for a couple of years. I was in the Temple of Psychic Youth actively for a few years. And then co-founded the Z Cluster with my friend Merrick, who's passed back in the early 90s. And since then, I've basically been solitary. I was a talismanic jeweler and started blogging, and that kind of led to the books. So
this has just been a part of your life. Sounds like pretty much forever.
As far as I can tell, yeah. Even if I go back to my earliest memories are extremely peculiar. I don't have a lot of them. As is somewhat common for, I think, young people that have the experiences like what I had with the Man in Black. It's kind of like that chapter before that gets shut. And and it's like I have super vague memories before that event. Like essentially that was like almost like a literal initiation into the rest of my life.
Totally.
So
How
most of
old
what
were you?
happened before that is I was 11.
11, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. You still
Yeah.
probably assume have vivid memories of that experience.
Oh fuck yeah.
Yeah.
That's the most vivid thing that has ever happened to me.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild. I was told at other places, but I had gotten into science fiction pretty heavily before that, science fiction and fantasy, and I found that I grew up in the East Bay of San Francisco Bay Area, and I was about 20 miles from Berkeley, and there was a really killer science fiction and fantasy bookstore in Berkeley that I would basically beg my mom to take me to periodically and blow all of my money on huge stacks of paperbacks. And yeah, so I was in a dream, and I was on upstairs at Dark Carnival, which was the store. And it was just one of those, floor to ceiling bookshelves, everything too close together, piles of books on the floor. Just awesome rat warren of a bookstore, and entirely sci-fi and fantasy and horror. And I was just like going through stacks of books like I did when I was in there. And I felt something change and looked up. And there was this figure of a man in entirely black clothes, like shirt, jacket, pants, whatever, with kind of long, slicked back, kind of naturally kind of wavy hair, at least like shoulder length, with a thick black beard and solid black eyes with no whites, no pupils, no nothing. And he just fucking blasted me. And it was this emanation of the most intense kind of spiritual cold that I could imagine. And that went on for a little while. And it was so fucking terrifying that I woke up out of that experience. And it was just like everything was different. But I couldn't put my finger on it. I had no context growing up as suburban white boy in whatever that was, 1978. That was like, what the fuck was that? But I never shook it. He did show up later, but he showed up once later, which was weird because he did it while I was fucking awake. And he showed up in the corner of my room and told me something and then bailed out.
See, that's the kind of experience I don't want to have.
It wasn't fun.
Yeah.
But I think it was, but I believe that thing functions, that whatever that spirit is, my friend Dara Mason Field has a really excellent book called Song of the Dark Man. That is the best current book on looking at the Men in Black, which is nice because it's kind of looking at the Irish folklore around it. But then the second half of it is all interviews with practitioners about their experiences with him. And he appears to just very commonly be like the initiator figure, that he kind of shows up and is like, wake the fuck up. And you do. But it's not one of those things that, people have written me many times, like, how do I do that? And I'm like, fuck if I know. I certainly didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
It sounds better than the experience was.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where I think there's so much. You could go through the entire thalamic system of magic and prepare yourself to get to the Abramelin ritual, to have a similar experience, right? And do all this work to prepare your psyche, but for some people it just happens. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about that, I think that there's a portion of the magical community that's like, no, that's not true. It doesn't just happen. You have to do it this way, and that's definitely not been my experience. I can't stand like that kind of structured ritual magic. I have no chance. I need to do whatever. I just do what I feel like doing, and reading and exploring where I feel like. But then when I had a powerful experience like that, it was actually induced by studying and drawing sacred geometry, but I
Right.
can't repeat the experience. That was just something that was involved in that initial triggering. So yeah, I mean, it can happen on accident or it can happen intentionally.
And also, I would put forward that, you know, I have a very, because of the spirits that I work with are very old. I have a very long sense of history, and so a lot of the time, what I find really confusing is it's like, if you think that that's the only way that happens, you're locked into what I consider like really recent methodologies among educated white people.
Yeah.
And this is not the norm globally. It is not the norm historically. Historically, these things come and get the people that they're interested in, or that they're really not interested in. And sometimes they give you gifts, and sometimes they fuck you over, and sometimes it's a combination. And so I think it's really weird that there's kind of a fetishizing about very particular periods of time that, to me, were already highly corrupted by the forces of empire, which are always anti-magic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Personally, I feel like there's way too much emphasis in magical spaces on quote unquote tradition. And again, like these traditions are new. They're the oldest ones are from the 1800s. I mean, it was very, very recent. And there's so much emphasis placed on tradition and on source material and all these things. And to me, it's like, hey, whatever works, whatever is getting you to where you want to go, whatever is getting you results, whatever feels intuitive to you. You know, there are certainly some techniques and some knowledge that I think can help steer people in the right direction. It's such a subjective experience, and
It is,
people, yeah, people have it all kinds of different ways, and in different times and places of their lives.
And I think it's also really important to remember that, again, and I will harp on it endlessly, that our consciousness as it is now is not normative human consciousness.
Totally agree.
It is massively corrupted by civilization. And we have this idea that 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 2,000 years ago is ancient.
Yeah.
It is like, dude, we have been at this since we fucking started walking, if not before. And that's pre-Homo sapiens, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that, again, it's like, I really do believe that the operation of civilization as a top-down kind of empire project is radically anti-women, it's radically anti-queer, it's radically anti-magic. All for the same reasons, which is that everyone that has their own kind of true core connection to other people, to the spirits, to whatever you want to view spirit as it is, as a global term, do not care about what you think they ought to do as king or as emperor or even as sheriff, right? It's like, in a way, you can kind of imagine like the Robin Hood tales as being a memory of something very, very old, really talking about like, no, this is about the people that said fuck you to the people that came in and said, this is how we're going to run things now. And they're like, oh no, not really. You can try. And they've been trying for a very long time, and I'm highly against it. So
Totally. I think that we have, in the last thousands of years, the last few thousand years, so let's say the last 2,000 years in particular, really allowed our right brain hemisphere, like the subconscious, right? And that's a massive oversimplification, but you know, to oversimplify, your right brain hemisphere is subconscious, and your left is where your speech center and your conscious thinking mind are. And we have completely abandoned this in favor of this, right? In favor of that little pea-sized portion of your brain that is talking and seeing and experiencing the world, whereas the vast majority of your brain exists in the spirit realm. I would say it or like, to put it in Jungian terms, like the collective unconscious, right, which you're connected through your own subconscious mind. And that is the connection to that side of yourself is a much more shamanistic approach to magic, whereas now we have this approach to magic which you can see manifest in practices like the Lema. I'm not trying to knock the Lema, by the way. I keep using it as an example, but like the Lema is cool. It's not for me. But or you look at the religious traditions in the world today, and you can even see it. Whereas you have this religion with all these particular rules and methods of doing things, and everything's got to be like there's the whole church stuff and all that, and like all that is so constructed out of that left brain way of doing things, where it used to just be this like connection that was already there, rather than having to go through all these steps and processes to try and get there, which are built on these rigid structures. And that's how you get to like religion and these very strict practices.
Right. And I think that this is very related to the book that I'm working on right now. I think it's important to really realize that there's a function for. There was something that we figured out how to do, like humans figured out how to do in different places and in different ways, which was really kind of figuring out. And I'm not talking modern, large scale, but they figured out different ways of doing agriculture, right? So there's a lot of indigenous and tribal cultures that have figured out kind of forest agriculture, like you burn certain things, you help plant certain things, you change things so that, when you come back through on your kind of following the herds kind of migrations, you were coming back to zones that you knew would be filled with other foods. There's a chunk of the world that did that, which was really like, how do we survive bad hunting seasons, bad winters, shit like that? Totally reasonable. But there's another aspect where it shifts into, if we can store all this food, we can decide who we allow to have it. And now we have social control. And we also now can pull, the first time, maybe it was 6 people out of the field, and let's go and raid those folks while they're stuck in the field, and then this turns into Rome,
Yeah.
And turns into all the forms of empire that we recognize as that. And that impulse to kind of dominate again is like, it's using the rationalizing part of the brain to say, this is acceptable because of these reasons, rather than being connected to the entire thing and going like, yeah, but that's a fucked up thing to do.
Yep.
Right. This is going to generate a chain of events that will not stop. And I think we're just in that at this juncture. And I think that it's something to, work against.
I fully agree. I mean, I think that I don't know how to work against it, right? And I think that that's what magic can really do for people, is to reconnect with that other part of your brain, and to reconnect to the spirit realm, right? And to the currents of life and the natural order or flow of things, whatever you want to call it, the Tao, getting back to that and stop trying to control everything. One of the principal lessons that, I really like to emphasize is that the difference between the fool and the magician, right, in the major arcana of the tarot, is the fool believes that they are, separate of their environment, and therefore they must find ways to control it, right? Whereas the magician understands that they are not separate of the environment, that the environment is them, that they are the environment, and that there's a natural relationship there. And by controlling the inner world, we gain far more control over our exterior world, right? Rather than trying to directly control the exterior world, which is something that may produce more tangible results in that exact moment, right? But that it's not, there's always these negative side effects to doing that. And you can see this, clearly with anybody, if you know that one person that's always trying to control everything, control freaks, right? They're always stressed out and anxious and worried, and they have none of that sense of like things are just going to be okay if you just go with the flow.
Right. And I think it's, we can see it too in non-Western cultures. And I use that pretty broadly, not academically, but it's been this push towards this idea, and we have it the worst here in the US, but of kind of hyper-individualism, which is weird as an animist. It doesn't make sense. You go, okay, if I'm enmeshed in the spirit world, I'm obviously enmeshed then in, even if we just view something as vague as energy fields, of all the people around me, I'm operating in this gestalt space. What I perceive as just me can't be. No. There's no way that could really be happening. And so I think that we can learn a lot from kind of not buying that hyper-individualistic story and not buying that total control story. And I think now people are beginning to figure out, as kind of systems collapse, like, oh yeah, it is more, can I survive here with my neighbors? Can I help them in ways that benefit all of us? Can I help the society, which is so anti-capitalist? It's just not the way that runs. And so it's denigrated, and it's viewed as primitive. It's viewed as backwards. It's viewed as overly emotional and not, rigorous enough. And I think that's just pure bullshit. I think it's provably wrong. I don't think I could not be here. I would have been dead as a child if it weren't for a bunch of other people. And I think it's funny that you go, we are the people that should know this. Of all the mammals running around, we are some of the most helpless, especially when we're born. And yet somehow we turn that into, but I'm this rugged individualist and I can go my own way. It's like, no, you never have been able to. You can pretend to, but it's not actually an option. And I think that's true spiritually. I think that we are in a system, however you want to view it. You don't have to view it animistically. That is clearly responsive, that is clearly conscious in some way. And you start to get real traction, I think, when you recognize those things.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to know you don't have to define it. I don't.
It's unnecessary.
I know what I believe based on what I experience, but I work with people continuously that do not share that, and the methods still work. And that's the key that I think is one of the things I got from chaos magic. Absolutely. It was like, I can grab somebody and go, I get that you don't see this way, but try it as if you do.
Yeah.
Because I believe that it's like an operating system that we have encoded into our neurology and into our bodies and into our DNA. Yeah. And if you start playing in line with that, stuff starts to work.
Yeah, and however you perceive it, I would say that, and the great thing is that there's benefit to not defining it so clearly, because especially like in the Zen Buddhist sense, when we define things, we lock them into that box. Well, this is what it is, right? There's a lot of benefit to not doing that, but then to also have the realization that you are in a reciprocal relationship with your environment. However you want to visualize that, or whatever story you want to put to it. And, and the story aspect of it, I find so fascinating, because I love mythology, but I don't take any mythology and say like, oh, this is objective truth. Mythology is a way that people try to explain the world around them. Right. Well, so today we have a mythology called quantum physics, right? We're trying to explain the world around us, but either way, they're just words. We cannot experience the subatomic interactions that are happening at CERN. We have models of them and math that explains the phenomenon that we're trying to predict and see if it happens, but you don't see it, right? We have to use words to describe it. And then you get into the power of, words in magic, which is like unbelievable how powerful words can be, how powerful speech and writing can be. And I think if you can really wrap your mind around all this stuff, the inevitable conclusion is that, everything's magic. The whole fucking universe is made out of magic, and it's all just interacting with each other all the time. And I'm a part of that. And that's really cool.
Exactly. Well, and I think it's true. And I'm glad that, bringing up the words thing, it's like, that's exactly the idea is it's like, we're essentially like, we have a whole physical set of shit that happens to us. And that can get defined in many different ways, but because I would define a lot of the psychic, like most of what I would say my psychic powers come through as physical. Like that's how my allies talk to me is through both sensations in the body. I'm guided through that onward up to very commonly pretty heavy spasms. Like they can talk to me by making me fucking vibrate in really unpleasant ways sometimes, but we've worked out kind of a middle ground that's not painful, and it's fine because that's what I have. But the storying is kind of everything, and that's the thing that I think is really fascinating, and it's unfortunate that we have lost so much of that understanding. And it's also it's like right now this is a great moment in time because you can also see like what we have is really violent clashes worldwide about different narratives of what the world is like.
Yeah.
None of them are completely accurate.
Yeah.
This is just a way that we choose to view things. Now, some of them allow way more possibilities.
Yeah.
Magic as an overall thing is a story that allows a vast amount of possibilities.
Yes.
And if you are open to that idea that you go, okay, my sense of what is possible, period, is based upon my upbringing, my conditioning, the stuff I did to myself, the stuff my culture, my parents, my schools, whatever did to me, my neurology, and I think a lot of us have got very peculiar neurology now, probably due to mass environmental toxins, among other things.
Yeah.
At that point, you can go, then what the fuck story do I want to be living in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because most of us are essentially mongrels out here and did not grow up in kind of functional cultural stories.
No,
like,
not
this
at all.
is if we look at like somebody like Tyson Yunkaporta, looking at Aboriginal stuff, if we look at a lot of the different indigenous mythologies, it's not that those things are the actual thing. It's like these are cultures that created a cohesive way of explaining things so they could talk to each other about stuff that we're just fucked for in English.
Absolutely.
Like,
yes.
we are so screwed. It's this game of going, well, how do you, without trying to collect somebody else's stories as yours, which is where the cultural appropriation piece becomes so critical, is going, part of our job to me as kind of magical folks is, can we actually produce a functional narrative set that deals with reality that accepts this? Because I do believe it's normal for us. I don't think it's anything unusual. I think the lack of awareness of it is extremely unusual. And that is really recent. If you look at some of Claude Lecateau's work in particular, he's done very good work on kind of how recently kind of everybody was dealing with the dead in a very different way. Or like Evan Wentz's Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries is great for that too, that you go, there were a lot of fucking people that were having very liminal experiences with others, non-human others, up until like yesterday. We can figure out how to do that, but I do think we have to figure it out for ourselves and then share that so that, because your story is going to work for a bunch of people. And as you share that, that's going to open up doors for people that aren't closed. They just don't have the story that works yet. What I do is kind of consciously doing that. And I think what a lot of folks are doing is consciously doing that, is like, let's see if we can give you some keys to opening up a very different way of perceiving the world. Because when you do that, the world is different.
It is.
And that it's the thing that, which I was watching a couple of your videos and I really liked that you repeatedly kind of come back to that. Like, it changes everything. It's not just your perception that changes.
It changes your perception, changes everything, because everything is, in a way, your perception of it, right? Like, none of this is real, right? And when, so the stories, I think that we're gonna come full circle eventually. I don't know how long it's gonna take, right? But we have we replaced mythology with this kind of new mythology. And people get so mad at me when I say this, when I say science is mythology, but like, I'm not saying that science isn't real. I'm saying mythology was much more real than we gave it credit for. But you got to understand that these are stories designed to give you a sense of what's going on around you and what's happening in the world that's relatable, because unfortunately quantum physics is not relatable. You can't hear this story and then have an emotional connection to it. And that's a key component that's really, really missing in our current modern story that we're telling ourselves. I forget who it was that said this, but it's brilliant. You live inside the story that your brain tells itself, and you're locked into that story. If you realize that, and this is the thing, this is the key, I think, and why I think chaos magic, regardless of my disagreements with Pete Carroll, Liber Null is the book that changed my life, because it gave me this understanding that if I change my beliefs, I change reality. Because reality is what locks you in, like your beliefs lock you into a particular reality. Your beliefs are like the operating system of your mind. You can upgrade your operating system.
No, absolutely. And I think it's talking to some friends of mine who were kind of fringe Buddhists a long time ago, it's perfectly fine to say, yeah, there is an ultimate reality. But it's also perfectly fine to say, and I don't think we are designed in a way to apprehend that.
No, I don't think so.
And I don't see any reason why we would be designed to. And so instead you go, yeah, we have to figure out a way to be in what we experience, and then hopefully also expand our ability to experience.
Yeah.
Because I think we're kind of crippled right now in a lot of ways. It's the idea that where we've gotten to is progress because we have so much material power to make things is very bizarre to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense that those things are correlated. And so instead, I'm interested in how do I figure out how to be a functional part of what I view as a very large organism, which I call the field. It's like, this is what most people would call the world or the universe. And it's clear to me that itself is functionally some kind of an agentic consciousness. You don't have to accept this. If you have this experience, you have this experience. It's not relevant to, this is not something I need to convince anybody about.
Yeah.
But if we start from that place, which I think is a very common perception among older ways of viewing things that humans have had, it drops you right into kind of the lived reality of the system. Which is all that we're really trying to do, I think, is we're looking for a way that it makes sense. And I don't think that what we've come up with makes sense, which is really the distinction between what you were talking about, which I would call scientism, in science. Like, yeah, clearly the scientific method is awesome for all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be here without it, because people would not have figured out how to control fire. They would not have figured out how to nap flint. That was fucking science.
Yeah.
That was fucking science. The fact that people figured out how to make pitch glue
from another country using technology is amazing.
It's amazing.
It's a kind of magic, but there's it can be gone in an instant.
It can be gone in an instant, and there's a way that it disconnects us from, or there's the way it can disconnect us from the actual world that we're in, which is my issue with it. And that's not a given. And that's the thing that I find really interesting. I used to be a pretty straight up Luddite. I was pretty much like, no, fucking, burn all of it. And I'm not anymore. But when it's all focused towards thought control and power extraction, it's not useful anymore. We can use it kind of on the side, but this is not what those folks want us to do. None of us sell enough books or have enough advertisers look at our shit to actually be worthwhile to any of these corporations, with extremely rare exceptions. And I would put even those as not qualifying in the grander scheme. Yeah. But no, it's I have no problem with that. I think but the Scientism absolutely is a religion. Yes. It's 100%. Materialism is a religion.
Atheism is a religion.
Atheism is a religion. Absolutely.
And it's the most dogmatic religion of all of them.
It is. It's the least fun, most dogmatic one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the most depressing. And so it's devoid of myth and story and ritual, and these things are so incredibly important because up until very, very recently, myth, story, and ritual were key components to everyone's life. Everyone, and now we don't have them at all, and we're very lost without these things. And we have a mental health crisis, like an epidemic, a mental health epidemic caused by a lack of story and ritual and myth, and a rejection of those things because of scientism, because of this is the story, you don't matter, the universe is a fucking accident, and all this stuff. And we've come up to this a wall with it that I think is very interesting. And I'm very glad that we've hit this wall, the wall being what they refer to as the hard problem of consciousness, right? How does, and this is getting to animism, how does consciousness arise from matter? It doesn't. Matter arises from consciousness. That is the answer. That eventually I hope science is gonna be like, okay, all right, fine. That's what it is, right? Because there's no other way to explain any of this. Consciousness cannot arise from matter, but when you have the point of view that all matter is conscious, which is the animistic point of view, which is, just called panpsychism in scientific circles, the same fucking thing. Now we're saying, okay, so if all matter is conscious and everything is connected and the universe is alive, oh shit, we're pagan again.
Right. And I would put, so I think of it differently a little bit, but it's very much a tiny thing. To me, everything has the potential for consciousness. Mm-hmm. And probably as a whole structure, it is. I mean, I essentially believe that what I call the field is an organism, and that we are, functionally like cells or even atoms within the organism, is how I describe it. When we look at a lot of the animist stuff that I connect to, it's pretty clear, because what fucks people up, this is it's a great example, is because we had, and I'm holding a rock, and so I'll get it up because it's relevant. Get it up on the screen, but for people that aren't watching it on YouTube, I'm holding a small rock. Because of the biases coming from monotheism in the beginnings of scientism, when dealing with primitives, as they viewed them, which was fucking ridiculous. Ass backwards as far as I'm concerned. It's like, no, they were dealing with the primitive motherfucker. That was you, not them. Because they would say, hey, there's like a spirit in this stone. Mm-hmm. They translated this as all stones have spirits. Mm-hmm. And, it's Bonzarov, who I bring up in every chance I get in the Black Faith, who was a Mongolian scholar in the 1800s. He said, no, that's fucking wrong. Like, no Mongolian shaman would have told you that there is a spirit in every rock, but some of them have spirits in them.
Mm-hmm.
And the shaman is the guy who knows that, and he knows which ones.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting thing because that begins to shift it. Now, I think that that still doesn't deny what you said. It just says that maybe 99 or 999 or 900 million out of whatever these things don't give a fuck about us.
Yeah.
And so they don't show.
Yeah.
Occasionally you find one that's like, hey, you want to play?
Yeah.
Or, hey, I'll fuck you up if you touch me. They're not all pleasant. And this concept of kind of indwelling spirits is a huge part of kind of animism to me, in that it makes it a little more, I think, again, comprehensible to people. That if we say everything is conscious, that gets really, really tricky. When you're talking about things that most of us view as inanimate objects.
Right.
But the idea of indwelling spirits then begins to make tons of sense, because I look at that and I go, oh, sure, right. I am a fucking, this meat body with an indwelling spirit. This meshes with everything is that we know about our past perceptions of what we are. Same thing with all the animals and kind of animal worship and animal personhood and personhood of rivers and lakes and mountains. These things begin to make sense then in a very different way. That it's like, no, not every grain of sand is necessarily a person, but that whole beach together probably has a spirit.
Totally.
That whole forest together has a spirit. Maybe that grove of trees has another spirit. Maybe that particular pool where lots of animals drown has now another spirit, both because of its nature as kind of swirling eddy of energy, which tends to be the places where things drown, plus all of that animate life force dying in it. You go, now we have this whole, to me, very understandable, inconceivable view of what it is to be kind of in a living world that's not so vague. And it's not that it's accurate. It's just that it's workable.
Yes.
And it maps to what we know of earlier ways of being and current ways of being that haven't lost track of that part of reality. Because this stuff didn't go away. It's just not what I grew up in.
Yeah.
This stuff's been running all over the planet and still is.
Yes. And it's far more prevalent throughout our history. We're living in this very, very strange slice of time where this isn't how everybody views the world, just innately like, yeah, duh. Right. Yes, of course. And wanted to clarify because I agree with you completely. Actually, when I say that everything is conscious, I think that consciousness is the baseline substance from which all things arise. But I don't think my bottle of Diet Coke over here is like alive and thinking. But I think that atoms inherently have a degree of consciousness as a portion of what makes an atom. But then there's non-physical organized consciousness, which can inhabit anything. And you can part of the art of making talismans is essentially bringing requesting or drawing down consciousness into an item, and same thing with if we're creating thought forms or egregores, servitor spirits. Can we organize this consciousness ourselves and give it a task, give it a role, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what is going on there, because that is available 100% of the time because it's the baseline substance of reality.
Right. Yeah. And I don't disagree with that at all. What I say, how I always describe it is that, like, I'm a spirit, you're a spirit, and we're existing in a space that is basically mass spirit enmeshment and entanglement.
Yeah. Yes.
And our culture just rejects this.
Yeah.
As on the whole, which I think is just fucking stupid. It's like, oh, come on, man. We have survived for a very fucking long time accepting these things as just an experienced given, not as faith, not as belief, but as an experienced given.
Yeah.
This was universally experienced. And yet, since we've begun making these shifts towards that all being fucking bullshit fantasy, we might take ourselves out. So who's smarter?
Yeah.
To me,
Absolutely.
you go, no, they were way fucking smarter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's if I have a kind of goal that me and the peeps, what I call my allies, are working towards, is kind of setting the stage for something that comes later. I think, because I think that this system is going to prove itself non-viable.
Absolutely.
It already has in many ways, but we hold on until we're underwater pretty much every time as a species. It's very much like addicts. We're very much addicts by nature, and bottom is bottom, and you don't change till you hit bottom, and bottom is way lower than most people want to ever experience.
Yeah, that's true. You know, another thing that is fascinating to me is this modern rejection of these ideas is that, well, okay, so when you take the old world viewpoint or an animistic viewpoint, there's a complete picture there. But in the scientism, the materialism viewpoint, you come up against this hard wall where it's like, okay, so explain your mind. You know, we can't. Okay. You've hit this wall, and science can explain everything in the material world and to such a degree that it's really, really beautiful, you know, but talk about consciousness of the mind and they're like, wow, I don't fucking know. You know, like it's just there's no explanation there. And everyone just accepts that, like, yeah, it's not important.
and like you said, and it's also interesting because you go, we accept it, and then we also say, well, why is everybody so unwell?
Yeah.
Why is everyone so psychologically and so emotionally unwell? And it's because there's this big chunk missing completely. And I'm really not a fan of any of the large monotheistic religions at all, because I don't think they actually provide this. I think that they were structured to deny this experience from the people that are kind of the general population, that as soon as you stick a person or a priesthood in between this experience of life and kind of the presence of spirit, to me, you're intentionally kind of doing damage to people. You wouldn't do that to somebody that you cared about. And so anytime, like, clearly there are Christians that practice a form of Christianity that I think is utterly fucking legit. But as soon as you get into these kind of structured state religions, you're in trouble as a people. And now we're just in a point where that's kind of shifting from those, monotheistic religions into this kind of materialist, scientist kind of tech fantasies of we're going to download ourselves into the machine. And it's like, why the fuck would you want out of this place? It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
This place is fucking killer. If you don't think this place is killer, you have not been to the places that I've been to.
Yes, I fully agree. And that's another thing that I really appreciate about animism and about paganism in general is that you realize that you are in the spirit realm. This is it. You are here. This is the place. This is where it's all happening. This is not, this is why I really dislike the Gnostic point of view. Right, the material realm is the bad place, and you want to escape to the spirit realm. No.
No, I have no use for that.
Thing. Yeah, that's a very depressing point of view. It's not going to serve you in this life. You are here and now, and this is something that even that I really it's such a weird thing for me because my introduction to occultism was atheistic LaVeyan Satanism, and it's still a very, very dear place in my heart for that practice, even though I'm not an atheist. But one of the things that LaVey said in that book was, don't waste your time going, trying to get to the next place, which is so many spiritual traditions are about, well, this isn't a great place, but the next place will be good. Just make this place good. Make you focus your intent on making your life beautiful and wonderful. And I think that there's so much wisdom in that. And I do think that we reincarnate and we come back here, right? So
I'm with you on that. I don't know exactly the mechanism there,
totally,
but I have enough experience that says that that's the case.
yeah. So if you're coming back here, it's in your best interest to try and make it a better place.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There's a really good article by Naomi Klein and someone else that just came out talking about kind of what's going on in the U.S. and how a big chunk of this is very kind of anti this place. They really kind of hate it here, which is bizarre to me because that's not my experience at all. There's parts of human society that I really don't like, but here is kind of awesome. And then I was watching a video of Russell Means from the American Indian Movement from, I think, 1972, kind of talking about the base difference in his understanding of or his experience of kind of native spirituality and what was going on among the U.S. government and kind of the colonizer mindset as being so radically different. They're like, y'all want to do this crazy ass shit that you don't, to paraphrase radically, that doesn't make any sense. This place is awesome.
Yeah.
All you have to do is not fuck it up.
Yeah.
And you can have a really good life is basically the translation there. And I think that we're at a point where maybe we hit rock bottom soon and people go, okay, well, let's really try something different. Let's not try and find a baseline that is kind of survivable. Let's see if we can find something that is actually workable. Because I think it's totally viable. We're not fucking stupid people. We're massively de-educated. We've been in massive mind control programs for a very long time. Because states don't want you thinking any other way than the way they want you to think, which is always going to be the way that serves them.
It's very true. And I'm not, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there's some things that are obviously true. Like these, like you're saying, mind control programs. Come on. Like if you don't believe that, you have to be in such active denial of it while you scroll through TikTok,
Yeah, like you didn't take an advertising class. You didn't take a psychology class. There's a whole bunch of shit you either didn't take or we're not paying attention to. Because the whole structure of all these things is that. When you talk about disinformation, you're talking about mind control. When you're talking about state issuing the directives of what reality is, that's mind control. If you aren't actually being able to sit on your own with the people in your life and figure out what you think is going on in these situations, you're experiencing some kind of cultural or social conditioning. That's mind control. And it's functional historically. In tribal settings, this works great up to a point, but you have to have checks and balances happening even within those structures where you go, dude, you keep having great ideas that keep fucking us over. So you're no longer chief and we can do this the easy way or the hard way, But yeah, if you do have kind of coherent story among people, this allows you to talk about things that we can't talk about because we don't have that. It's not that kind of a more unified explanation of things is bad. We just don't have it. And so we have to figure out another way to do this stuff.
This is, again, why I think chaos magic plays such an important role in the overall story of occultism in the past and in the future, is that historically you have a set of people with a set of beliefs and another set of people with a set of beliefs, and they meet and their beliefs are not compatible. And then for whatever reason, which I don't understand, their beliefs are incompatible. And so then we get war. Right.
Yep.
Whereas if we understand, if the understanding were, your beliefs, your stories, oh, those are like our stories and they're similar, but they're slightly different. Cool. Let's exchange stories and learn from each other. Both of us knowing that neither of these stories are objective truth, that there's something underneath them that we can never touch or see or even talk about, but that these stories are constructs and ways of understanding rather than being objective truth. Now all of a sudden there's no reason to hate each other. There's just
Right. No.
sharing these stories.
Absolutely. And I think we see that this has gone on extensively. And even in places that did have, it's not like we haven't done, as soon as we could get fucking enough stores in that you could field an army, or that one part of an area, you know, had massive drought and another didn't, we've had war. You know, that's I think a given. But there's a way that we've moved into a very strange place, because we can do it another way. And I do agree that magic is a very useful tool for that. And I think that it's also, I think Magic was good. The Temple of Psychic Youth was very good for me because it was a little closer to now. Because, and this will not make sense to everybody because people have a different perception of things, but like, I can't actually put myself into really understanding Austin Osman Spare in 1906.
Yeah.
That's not available.
He's a bit of a madman.
But he grew up in an entirely different world.
Yeah.
Even though it's not that long ago. So I look at his book from 1906, you go, okay, this guy's in his 20s, whatever. Whoa, like, I have way too many different influences that have been running forever on me. I go back 200 years, 300 years, 400 years. It gets weirder and weirder and harder and harder. And so I think part of the game too, and what I liked about chaos magic and why I think it was such a helpful framework for me to really get started with, is I could look at these things and go, what sits behind all of this? Like, I've got this whole Golden Dawn system of magic book. I've got Crowley. I've got William Gray. I've got whoever I had lying around. And what actually is happening behind all this stuff? And I ended up taking that particular route that I went very heavily into kind of spare related work and sigil related work. And then, but I'd always been making things, like making things by hand. I'm very aggressively invested in material bases as being a really critical component because I'm super kinesthetic, but I also have other reasons. And when Nicholas Hall's book, Chaos and Sorcery, came out, though Hall was kind of pointing the work in very different directions than I would, I was like, what's going on here? Yeah. And I think that Hall's work was kind of rooted in more shamanistic approaches to sorcery. And so I kind of, between that and probably Visual Magic by Jan Fries, I kind of dumped all of those kind of ceremonial constructs, kept a few things from Witchcraft because I have very good, meaning Wiccan Witchcraft even, because I've had excellent results working with the elements using that language and have forever. And I realized through Chaos Magic that like, I can keep that. I don't have to throw that out because it works. Yeah. But I don't have to worry about whether I'm drawing my pentagram in the right direction according to whoever.
I think that correspondences are real, but the other stuff is like just accoutrement added on top of it.
And it's also that the correspondences can. The other thing to know about me is that I cannot follow fucking instruction for the life of me. I'm like the worst student on earth. I have like a vicious mental block against do it step by step like this. I don't do it. Never have about anything. It's bad. But the thing that's cool about it is instead I'll go, you'll give me 2 steps. You'll go, okay, you want to make the puppet to look like a human body, and then you start putting shit in it. It's like, done. I don't need to read the rest of this. I'm off to the races.
Yeah.
And, a couple weeks of interesting experiments that may go horribly awry. Later, I'll have some idea of what this actually does for me.
Yeah.
Not what Nick Hall or somebody else says it should do for me.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, what I got from Chaos Magic, because I got the permission to go like, yeah, I'm going to disassemble this and keep the pieces that I like and see if it still works kind of the same. And if it's different, how is it different? And how can I make it more different in the way that I'm really after?
Yes.
It became hyper experimental. It's super open-ended, and I've kind of run on with that forever. And I laugh now because it's like, yeah, no, I'm a fucking hardcore animist spirit dude. It's not where I thought I would land, but I'm fully there. And it works for me, and it works for a bunch of people. It doesn't work for others. That's fine. So I speak to the people that it works for as much as I can.
Yeah, I love that. I think you've nailed it. Honestly, I really do. I think that you're getting as close to something that you could call truth, right? As we can really get, which isn't really all that close, but like the closer we can inch towards it, the better. There's a story that I really love, and this is really happening. Let's see if I can remember the guy's name. It is. Okay, well, I can't remember his name, unfortunately, at this exact moment, but there's a Chinese MMA fighter who one day got sick of it and said, you know what? Kung Fu is bullshit. Tai Chi is bullshit. These are not fighting techniques. These are choreographed dances that are very, very beautiful, but they're not effective methods of fighting, and I'm going to prove it. And he went around, and he's my age. He's a little overweight. He's kind of over the hill MMA fighter. And the thing about MMA, this is my point, about chaos magic and mixed martial arts, is that an MMA fighter doesn't give a shit about a tradition. So if this kick from this tradition works, I'm taking it. If this punch from this tradition works, I'm taking it. And I'm going to assemble something that is far more effective than any of these traditions. And so this guy has been going around in China, and unfortunately he's been like horrifically punished by the Chinese government for doing this, but he's going around to these masters of Kung Fu and Tai Chi and just whooping their butts. He's like, yeah, fight me. And he wins every single time. He has taken out all of these masters of these traditional martial arts forms, which unfortunately are kind of bullshit. Because if you just what works and go with that, that's all you need.
And the thing that's super interesting too is I'm also a fan of that art form, but it's also they worked in context. They worked in context when everybody was playing by the same rules.
Yeah.
This is what happened to the Romans when they the Romans had a fucking heyday among the Celts because you could get the Celts. I talk about this all the time too. Like you would roll a legion in on 6 dudes and yell at them, and they would get all fucking up at it and charge you, and you'd kill them. And they rolled into more northern parts of Germania at that time, and they just didn't find anybody. Like they were like, oh no, there's like 1,000 of you idiots on the road. We're not going to fucking be here when you get there. You can have the farm because you ain't going to hang out here. Yeah. And they eventually started taking them out from the trees. And we have kind of what we think of as, in many ways, the beginnings of modern guerrilla warfare. Yeah. That they were like, you think we have to get in a line and fight you? Like, what's that about? And magically, it's very related to magic in that it's not about does the Golden Dawn system or does anything else work. It's about does it work for you and does it do what you want it to and what you need it to. And if it doesn't, fucking go somewhere else. There are people who are deeply pleased with the results they get from very rigorous traditional grimoire work.
Totally. Yep.
Doesn't make it any better than hoodoo. Exactly.
Totally agree.
Doesn't make it anything. It just means that it works for those people.
Yep.
It's like telling the celiac that they need to eat more fucking wheat because wheat is the ultimate superfood. And you go, well, that's awesome, except that it's going to kill that guy eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the arrogance that people like, and I just don't understand it. And maybe that's because I got into chaos magic so long ago that it changes. Chaos magic changes your brain. This is one of the best things about it is it changes your brain. Right. So I always look at these different magical traditions as like languages. So there's not a correct language. Right? There's French and there's English and there's Spanish and there's German, blah, 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 blah. There's all these different languages and languages change and develop over time. Any system of magic is just a language that you're using. Right? But then there's the underlying concept of language, which is ineffable because we have to use language to say anything about it. But it's there regardless. And it's something that makes us unique as humans as the ability to develop language. And I think magic is very, very similar. And then we're right back to that correlation between words and magic, which is so important. And I just want to say that fighter's name is Zhuji Dong. It was driving me crazy to not get it. So if anyone's interested in that story, Zhuji Dong.
Yeah. And I think you're totally right. I was talking in a course that I just taught about one of the things that kind of came to me recently was like, if we accept that we have no evidence that anything other than animism was the historical kind of norm for thinking about and interacting with the spirit world. One way that we can look at everything else is almost like that's the code. Like that's the underlying code that we run on.
Yeah.
And everything else is how I describe it, is like the graphical user interface that you produce to kind of limit what parts of the code you get into and what you can change. Yeah. And also to make that particular chunk that it does affect more user-friendly. And so if we look at it that way, we can look at Golden Dawn work, we can look at Hoodoo, we can look at all these different things and go, okay, these are just different overlays over the kind of, I'll call it functional reality, because it's probably not ultimate reality, but it's the functional reality. Which is like, no, this place is mostly some kind of alive, and there's all these other spirits around, and some of them will play with you. Some of them in ways you don't like, and you might need to learn some skills about that. But you can get in there. And it's not to say that trying to go straight in is always going to be the best, because I don't fucking do that to write books. I write books in Scrivener. It's an awesome fucking tool. I do not sit here and do that in my fucking raw computer with no fucking software on it. I could, and for somebody that's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I think that, so speaking of software, like I think that the way you're describing it, I'm very grateful I'm 41, and I feel like I'm just on the edge of remembering life before like Windows and the internet. Right. So to me, kind of what you're saying is that there's this code or this underlying reality that we don't really have access to. And I think of that as like MS-DOS. If you remember, you used to have to type // blah, 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 to get into whatever you wanted. But now you just click on it.
I couldn't remember what it was called because that's how old I am. But
yeah. But so, and they're like, okay, so, the reality that we experience is Windows, but then there's underneath that, we know there's DOS underneath it. There's stuff to be there. Yeah. And then there's stuff underneath that I don't fucking understand, like Python. I have no clue what's happening there,
Exactly. And I think that that's the main thing that I try and do with people is figure out, like I try and, like when I'm working with people in like in the group that I ran or that, I try and be so overt about what my leanings are that people can kind of self-select out.
Yeah, for sure.
And, so when I announced the course that I did, a few people were like, hey, this is what really works for me in courses. And I was like, oh, you shouldn't take this course because that is totally not what's going to happen. You're after somebody else. You're after somebody else.
Yeah. Speaking of which, one of my current students took your course, and I was talking to her this morning. I lead a meditation with all my students every morning, and she was saying it was, she loved it. It was great. Totally an awesome experience. So yeah,
that's awesome.
You're very cool. Yes.
Yeah. No, it was a really good one. I was pleased. I hadn't done one in about 5 years. So
I love teaching so much. It is my favorite part of this job is to be on Zoom with a bunch of people talking about magic. I despise making YouTube videos. I hate it. I do it, and I'm not trying to be ungrateful. Like I force myself to do it, and I'm glad that I'm doing it and all that. But like it's just such an awkward experience because I'm talking to a camera and there's no one on the other end. But I love teaching and I love having, all these, even if we're doing it over Zoom, having this big energetic group discussion about magic with all these people that are, interested in the subject. I love it so
It's
much.
awesome.
I can't imagine
No, I'm with you. It's awesome. Yeah. It's awesome. It's something that I was not sure how I would like, how much I would like, but I really did like it. It's been really good. I was really not sure. Kind of one of the main tools that I use is a combination of kind of embodiment practice into different energy works and kind of guided work and into offerings and things like that. And I was not sure how that would work before I started doing them in Zooms, and they work very well, which was cool. I didn't know that was a viable thing, but it very much is.
Yeah, it's very cool. I've taken a number of online courses that were interactive and live that have really helped me and changed my life. So I have a very high standard for how these things should go. I'm always trying to make my courses better. But it's, there's writing books, there's doing YouTube, and there's teaching. And like of that kind of three things that we all kind of have to do in this, if this is what we do for a living, then, for me, the live teaching aspect of it is just the part that I get the most out of. And I do experience, because I'll invite people to come do guest lectures. I'm the weirdo. Everyone else is like, oh, I hate doing it. That's the part I don't want to do. I just want to write books, or I want to make videos. And I'm like, this is the part that I thrive on. I love it. But then when it comes to making videos, I have to force myself. Writing, I do love, but it takes me, like, my process is so weird because I'm a little dyslexic and very ADHD. So I'll write chunks of a chapter of whatever I'm writing and then realize that I have to completely rearrange the chunks to make it make sense.
Yep.
I
do know. Do you use Scrivener?
No, I don't know what that is.
Check it out.
Okay, I will.
If you're a Mac user, I don't think it exists outside of Mac.
Guy.
Ah, okay. Never mind.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, it's very good for nonlinear writers. Which I am a very nonlinear writer. So by the time that I get to the point of compiling the first draft, it's actually like dozens and dozens of little subheadings that I try and figure out what order they go in.
That's my process also. And I get burnt out on it a little bit. I'm like, okay, I need to go shake this off and come back and look at it. And
come back a little bit. Absolutely.
When it comes to teaching, I can just talk. And I'll just
So my Patreon is almost entirely we have a Discord which is very active, but it's almost entirely videos of me just doing Q&A.
Yeah.
Because I just was like, fuck it, it's gonna be what it is. I'm not editing anything. And I just, like, some days I'm in the mood and I'll answer a few questions and then I'll drop those videos. That works, but I've taught 2 classes for other people now, I think, maybe 3. And now I know it's like, there is no way I can do this unless I've got at least one person's face up on the screen.
Yeah.
Like, I have to have somebody to interact with, or I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing talking to this nothing?
Yeah. And this is, it doesn't work. I don't know what it is about me, but when I have someone to talk to, my thoughts organize themselves. When I'm just talking at the camera, it's just like, what was I keep missing the points I wanted to make, or I got to go back and redo it, or like it's a frustrating thing. But
you got to pay somebody to sit on the other end with you.
That might be where it starts to go. That might be how I get my best videos, to be honest.
Give somebody some free access to some classes and go, here's the deal. Every Tuesday we'll get together for an hour and I'm going to talk at the camera with you and another screen on Zoom. So I feel like I'm doing this with somebody.
Honestly, I was just yesterday. I mean, she was busy, but I asked my girlfriend, "Hey, can you just be on Zoom with me for like an hour so I can get this done?" Because I've been working all day on a video that I still am. I'm going to release it tomorrow, but like I still am going to redo parts of it again later today because I missed another huge fucking point that I wanted to make, and I realized it. Like I thought I was done, and then I'm like going to bed. I'm like, fuck. It was the whole thing I wanted to say. I didn't say it.
Yeah, it's super tricky. It's super tricky. Well, it's also weird. I mean, we've all had to figure out. I mean, I self-publish as well, so it's interesting to be in a point. It's cool that I can do this, and so I love that aspect of it. But it is really weird to go like, wow, I really have to be able to put on a whole lot of different hats to do this. Which is why I've thought about going and doing the YouTube thing, and I was like, that's just one too many for me. I may have an audio podcast come up, something like that. I have it in the works. I know what I want it to be on. I know who the first 30 guests I want to get are. So it'll probably happen, but after the next book's done.
We need more good magical podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of great ones, but there's some nonsense too.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so selective again about like what and who I listen to or what and who I read, and because I have such a short attention span, you know, and in the moment I'm reading a book and I'm like, okay, I'll just kind of zone out, and then it becomes very difficult for me. You know, one of like a good example is Quantum Psychology, which is such a great book, but like I feel like this is true for a lot of books about magic and these topics. Like you get all the meat, all the good stuff is in the first 3 chapters, and then there's just like a bunch of other stuff that's like, you said what you had to say, and now you've got to fill your you know agreement with your publisher about 50,000 words or whatever it is, and there's just more stuff there.
I'm desperately trying to write shorter books.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of short books. I think short books.
I'm really working on keeping this one small and the next one even smaller. So we'll see how it goes.
I love people who are concise, you know, and I can take an idea and really chew on it without 80 pages of exposition. But I'm weird in the way that I consume information. But anyways, I gotta get going, Aidan. But this has been so great. I loved having you on the show. This is an awesome conversation. And I really, really appreciate you being on here. And I really can't wait to read your portion of This Is Chaos.
I think we just had it, but I think we just talked about it. But no, it's been a total pleasure, and thank you for having me on. I'm really excited that book comes out. I think probably you had the same experience that I did, which is like I got the message from Pete and was like, "Oh yeah, like no question. I don't care what it is. Like, dude." His books are not my favorite at this juncture because I'm on a completely different path, but they were absolutely critical to me getting where I am. And so I was like, oh yeah, no doubt. You get whatever you need here.
Yeah, same. And Pete and I had already been working on another project, which we're still working on. So it was kind of like, hey, do you want to do this also? And I was like, hell yeah, I want to do that also. It's like, this is, and for me, this is the first time I'll be published ever. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's exciting for me. And it did lead to Wiser asking me to write a full book. And
very good.
Yeah, man, it's just, it's been pretty unbelievable, right? And this is the kind of thing, last thing I'm going to say, that this is why magic is so amazing, is that when you put, with whatever methodology works for you, you tell the universe what you want, and then you do everything you can to achieve it and say like, help me achieve this, right? Or, you know, whatever it is, because I never would have probably been able to get a hold of Pete. I don't know, but I started doing the podcast pretty much because I felt like my spirit guides bullied me into doing it. And through the podcast, Wiser got a hold of me and said, you want to interview some of our authors? And I'm like, hell yeah, thank you, because booking guests is difficult. And then they hooked me up with Pete, and now I'm working on this thing with Pete, and then Pete has to be in the book, and then it just steamrolls, you know? And this is...
Which goes back to that whole thing we were talking about earlier. It's like, it's all relationship. It's all interconnection. It's all interconnected. And magic is just a tool for getting in there and working those things. Yeah. As best we can, you know.
Right on. Well, again, thank you so much, Aidan. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. And I will talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
Absolutely. You take care.
All right. Bye, everybody.